Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio recently announced that he would not seek re-election in his party's September 2024 leadership election. He has no clear successor, so Japan's ruling party is facing a potentially chaotic leadership election. In this video, I will take a look at Kobayashi Takayuki, aka Kobahawk, the first politician to officially throw his hat into the ring in this election. Unlike other potential candidates, he is not well known outside or inside Japan, but, as I'll explain, he is skillfully taking advantage of the current political chaos to position himself as the leader of a new generation of Japan's conservative politicians. So, who is this guy? What's his background? And what are his political views? Well, first, let's start with the basics. Kobayashi is 49 years old, so if he won the LDP leadership race, he'd become the youngest prime minister in post-war Japanese history. He is from a humble background. He was born and raised in the Tokyo suburbs of Chiba Prefecture and currently represents Chiba's 2nd district in the House of Representatives. Kobayashi is also someone with a very impressive educational and professional background that shows he has worked very hard to climb to the top of the Japanese political world. Unlike other leadership candidates in this race, such as Koizumi Shinjiro or Kono Taro, Kobayashi is not a member of one of Japan's great political dynasties. His father was not a politician, nor was his grandfather. He often speaks of himself as coming from a middle-class salaryman's family. He went to a normal public elementary school and studied very hard to rise to the top of Japan's highly competitive entrance examination-based education system, earning a place at Tokyo's elite Kaisei High School. Upon graduation, he entered the University of Tokyo and majored in law. He then continued along an elite career path by securing a job at Japan's Ministry of Finance. During his time at the ministry, he studied at Harvard's Kennedy School, earning a master's degree in public policy. It is not an anomaly in Japanese politics for politicians to have degrees from both the University of Tokyo and Harvard's Kennedy School. The Japanese government has had a program for some years in which government bureaucrats are sent to Harvard to get graduate degrees, and some of these bureaucrats later leave the government and become politicians. This is the case for Kobayashi. It's also the case for another potential leadership candidate, Mr. Hayashi. During his time in the United States, Kobayashi also worked at the Japanese embassy in Washington. Although several of his potential rivals in the LDP leadership race have experience working as foreign ministers, it can hardly be said that Kobayashi is unprepared to deal with diplomacy. He has international experience, and from some videos I've seen online, he also appears to be quite fluent in English, a trait that is sometimes rare among Japanese leaders. In his private life, Kobayashi is married and has one daughter. Some media reports have noted that his wife has a very impressive academic and professional background. She graduated from the University of Tokyo and Harvard Law School. Like Kobayashi, she's a lawyer, and she has worked for Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs as an expert on human rights treaties. Her educational background and international experience could make her one of Japan's most diplomatically active first ladies in recent memory if Kobayashi were to win this leadership race. So, why did Kobayashi leave his cushy job at the Ministry of Finance to become a politician? Well, the story goes that while he was working at the American Embassy in 2009, he was very dissatisfied with the direction of the Japanese government, which was under the opposition Democratic Party at the time. So he wrote a letter to the leader of the LDP asking to become a candidate for their party. And so he left his government job to run for a seat in the House of Representatives in the 2012 general election. This was a historically important election for the LDP. Abe Shinzo was leading his party to take back Japan from the opposition Democrats. Back in the 2009 election, the LDP had lost over 100 seats in the national diet. This had forced many unpopular conservative politicians into an early retirement. So, in 2012, Abe needed new candidates to run for the old seats that the LDP had lost. And one of these candidates was Kobayashi. Kobayashi ran and won in Chiba's 2nd district, which the LDP had previously lost by 24 points in the 2009 election. He was part of a new generation of LDP politicians who entered the national diet as part of Abe's massive electoral victory. In the Japanese media, these lawmakers became known as the Abe children. Most of them were quite young when elected, and about 30 of them remain in the diet today, mostly in their 40s and 50s. So far, none of the Abe children have come close to becoming prime minister. A recent news article described Kobayashi as the leader of the Abe children, with some of the support base for his leadership run coming from his political siblings. So now that we know how Kobayashi became a politician, what did he do while he was a lawmaker, and what policies does he support? Kobayashi has served 4 terms as a member of the House of Representatives and also served as Minister of State for Economic Security for about 1 year during the Kishida administration. This may sound important, but it is a relatively low-maintenance post that doesn't compare to major cabinet positions. It is also quite common for politicians holding Minister of State for Special Missions posts to hold several such positions at once. For example, as this chart shows, Kobayashi, highlighted in orange, concurrently held the positions of Minister of State for Economic Security, Minister of State for Science and Technology, and Minister of State for Space Policy. He was succeeded by Takaichi Sanae, highlighted in red on this chart, who is currently holding all 3 of those posts, plus the post of Minister of State for Intellectual Property and Minister of State for Cool Japan Strategy. It would be fair to say that Kobayashi's experience as a Minister of State amounted to a fraction of the workload and responsibility of the high-profile ministerial posts that are considered traditional prerequisites for becoming Prime Minister, such as Foreign Minister, Defense Minister, Finance Minister, or Chief Cabinet Secretary. So a lot of people consider him too inexperienced to become Prime Minister. However, Kobayashi has framed his relative youth and inexperience as not abnormal among world leaders. Is it truly necessary to have decades of political experience to become a world leader? If you compare him to other G7 leaders, he's slightly older than Emmanuel Macron and just a couple years younger than Justin Trudeau. Some of his policy plans that he recently announced seem to draw upon his branding as a former finance expert and person who was in charge of economic security. He said that he wants to implement a new Nippon innovation plan that will bring together the national and local governments to create special strategic industrial centers. He's also made pledges about food security, a common concern of conservatives who have justified subsidies for agriculture, but he says that he's going to make these industries profitable somehow. As I said at the beginning of this video, Kobayashi has a nickname, Kobahawk, which takes the first part of his family name and combines it with the English translation of the first character of his given name, which is the kanji for hawk. As Kobahawk, he stands out from other politicians who share his very common family name, including 2 other LDP lawmakers in the House of Representatives who are named Kobayashi. Over on Twitter, he posts under the username @Kobahawk and has decorated his office with a cool-looking hawk sculpture. Kobayashi has also been using a hawk logo during press conferences, and this isn't just a clever play on words. Kobayashi does appear to be a politician who is a hawk. He could be a standard bearer of the hawkish right wing of the LDP. Kobayashi has strongly conservative views on national defense, meaning that he will push forward the legacy of Abe Shinzo and other hawks who wanted to revise Japan's pacifist constitution, increase its defense spending, and take on increasingly proactive roles in regional security. Officials in Washington and people affiliated with various security think tanks will probably welcome the election of someone like Kobayashi as a partner who will move forward the policies that they want Japan to enact. There are also indications that he shares some of the late Abe Shinzo's views on controversial historical issues. Kobayashi is a member of Nippon Kaigi, a lobbying group that promotes a view of history that downplays or denies the negative aspects of Japan's imperialism and Japan's conduct in World War II. He's also made public visits to Tokyo's Yasukuni Shrine, a controversial religious site that enshrines Japan's war dead, including wartime leaders executed as Class A war criminals after the war. If he becomes prime minister and continues to make visits to Yasukuni, it could cause diplomatic problems with Japan's neighbors and headaches for officials in Washington who do not want history issues to derail cooperation between its Asian allies. Kobayashi is also affiliated with the Shinto Seiji Renmei, a religious lobbying group that takes strong stances on gender and sexuality issues. He is against same-sex marriage, even though public opinion polls show a huge majority of Japanese voters have no problem with legalizing it. On another social and legal issue that has widespread public support, allowing women to have separate surnames from their husbands, he has echoed statements that other conservative leaders have used for years to justify inaction, claiming that there needs to be more discussion on the matter before any changes can be made, but not really specifying when that discussion will take place, when it will end, and what kind of changes will be made afterwards. In other words, probably nothing is going to happen on this issue if he does become prime minister. I'm sure that some of you listening to this video aren't the least bit surprised by some of the things I've just said. After all, the LDP is a conservative party. Kobayashi isn't running for leadership of a left-wing party, so of course he's not going to have very progressive views. However, it is a party that does have some center-right politicians with generally more progressive views on social issues, and some who aren't so supportive of nationalistic stances on history issues. Although Kobayashi was not a member of former Prime Minister Abe's faction, he has positioned himself as an ally of the LDP's right wing, not the center of the party. For example, in the 2021 LDP leadership election, Kobayashi backed Takaichi Sanae, Abe's favored candidate, who ultimately failed to win because the party compromised on the more moderate Kishida. As I'm recording this video, it is expected that Takaichi will soon be announcing her candidacy, so this will put her into competition with Kobayashi for the votes of the right wing of the LDP. Analyst Tobias Harris of Japan Foresight, someone you should be following if you aren't already, has shared a chart that he created showing the ideological overlap between various candidates, including Kobayashi. As you can see, he is hawkish on foreign and security policy, but other candidates are just as hawkish on these issues. And when it comes to social issues, he's not quite as right-wing as Takaichi Sanae is, so people who care more about social issues might gravitate towards her, and the vote of the conservatives could be split, causing both of them to lose. So, now that we've covered these issues, would it be fair to say that Kobayashi has a decent chance at becoming the next Prime Minister of Japan? Well, it will be a crowded field with potentially more than 10 candidates at the time I'm recording this, but he is positioning himself well within the field as someone wanting generational change within an unpopular political party. In addition to the problem I mentioned about splitting the conservative vote by competing with Takaichi, there's also the problem of splitting the vote of people who want to support a new young candidate. And Kobayashi's main rival in this regard will be Koizumi Shinjiro, the son of one of Japan's most popular post-war prime ministers, a young and handsome guy who almost everybody knows. However, not a lot of conservatives are fans of the young Koizumi. In fact, if you go on social media sites like Twitter or YouTube, you'll find an extreme amount of hate from the right wing towards Koizumi. So there may be an opportunity for Kobayashi here in courting the right of the party that seems to think that Koizumi is some kind of hidden liberal or someone who isn't serious enough about conservative values. There's also the issue of possibly fearing that Koizumi will try to reform the party too much or be too strict towards lawmakers who are involved in recent scandals. When one looks at how Kobayashi has approached the two major scandals that helped bring down the Kishida administration, one gets a sense that he's not really going to take a very strict stance. And this raises questions about whether or not voters will be satisfied if someone like Kobayashi becomes prime minister. Will there actually be the kind of change that they want to happen to the LDP? Or will he forgive all these scandal-ridden politicians? The first of the two scandals involved LDP politicians' ties to the Unification Church, an extremist religious organization based in South Korea with tens of thousands of converts in Japan. These ties were brought to light when former Prime Minister Abe was assassinated by a former member of the church, whose family was destroyed after his mother was convinced to make ruinous donations to the church. In the months after the assassination, many similar cases of people being scammed by the Unification Church were revealed in the media, and it turned out that many LDP lawmakers were quite friendly with the church and relied on it for support in elections. Over 100 LDP lawmakers were revealed to have ties to the Unification Church. One of them was Kobayashi Takayuki. There are records of him sending a congratulatory message to a church-affiliated group, conducting an interview with a church-affiliated publication, and participating in a church-affiliated Peace Road event. All these actions, which may seem insignificant to people unfamiliar with the Unification Church, are part of the church's strategy of legitimizing itself to members and potential converts, who are assured that they are not part of a harmful cult because mainstream politicians praise them. There is also a report that Kobayashi praised the Unification Church's teachings while dissing the views of Soka Gakkai, a lay Buddhist organization that forms the support base for the LDP's major coalition partner, the Komeito Party. According to journalist Suzuki Eito, Kobayashi said the following at the 2021 Peace Road event. The Liberal Democratic Party is in a coalition government with Komeito, so I might get in trouble for saying this, but the teachings you all are studying are superior to those studied by Komeito. As a member of the LDP and the Diet, I will work together with you all to promote the true family movement. In this case, the true family movement refers to the religious teachings of the Unification Church. After his ties to the Unification Church were revealed, Kobayashi claimed to have not known much about the religion and said he does not recall making such a statement at the Peace Road event. Other LDP politicians have suffered from similar memory loss regarding their ties to the church. In a recent press conference, Suzuki Eito noted that members of the Unification Church were active in Kobayashi's support organizations. In response, Kobayashi disavowed ties to the church, but said that he had to respect the religious freedom of individuals, so he would not ban volunteers on the basis of religion. This leaves open the door for future political cooperation with the church via a don't ask, don't tell policy on church membership. The second major scandal facing the LDP involves the party's major factions maintaining off-the-books slush funds. For many years, some of the party's largest factions, including the faction that Kobayashi belonged to, held fundraising parties that sold huge numbers of tickets without reporting details or data on donors. Ticket sale revenue that exceeded certain quotas was treated as off-the-books income and kicked back to individual lawmakers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were secretly spent, and there are no receipts for where the money went. Dozens of lawmakers were involved in this very shady scheme, but only a few received serious punishments. Prime Minister Kishida's response to the scandal was to formally dissolve several factions, bar some of the scandal-tainted politicians from important posts, and institute some minor reforms to fundraising rules. This incredibly weak response to a major fundraising scandal did not win over the Japanese public, who have repeatedly told pollsters that they are not satisfied with Kishida's handling of the issue. It's the biggest reason why Kishida has decided to step down as prime minister. Earlier this month, Kobayashi commented on the lawmakers involved in this scandal, saying that each of those who were penalized are talented. Without a unified effort, it will be difficult to overcome the national crisis. This is a clear indication that he wants to draw upon the so-called talents of the politicians that many voters would consider corrupt. In a press conference after announcing his candidacy, Kobayashi stated that he did not plan to pursue additional punishments against lawmakers involved in the slush fund scandal. This caused some media to criticize Kobayashi for trying to portray himself as a young reformer without actually taking a strict stance on the biggest reason why the public trust in the LDP has taken such a nosedive. According to one report from the liberal Asahi Shimbun, politicians involved in the money scandal are supporting Kobayashi because they see him as a savior. If he wins the leadership election, they might find their way back into positions of importance within the party. And there are a lot of these lawmakers, and a lot of them are dissatisfied about the idea that they should be punished. They think they didn't really do anything wrong at all, and so they want to support a politician who won't punish them and keep them out of important posts within the government and guarantee their future within the party. Appealing to scandal-tainted politicians might sound like a terrible election strategy, but it is important to note that Japan's ruling party has a closed election system that does not include input from the general public. LDP leadership elections are decided by a multi-round system that counts the votes of fee-paying members and elected lawmakers. The elected lawmakers who vote include a lot of politicians tainted in the two recent scandals. Kobayashi might be polling under 2% in public opinion polls, but if lawmakers decide to ignore public opinion and swing their votes towards him, he could pull off a surprise victory. However, as I am recording this video, there's still a month to go until the leadership election, and a lot can change in the coming weeks. When the other candidates formally enter the race, the competition will become a lot fiercer. There's also the chance that tabloid magazines could drop scandalous articles that destroy the chances of candidates who initially appear to be strong contenders. At this point, Kobayashi does not seem like the strongest candidate. But even if he loses, a respectable showing in the election could bring him into consideration for a cabinet post. He's definitely a rising star within the party, and he could have a bright future if he stays out of other scandals. Okay, I'll wrap up the video here. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. I would like to hear your opinions about Kobayashi in the comments if you have them, as well as any suggestions for future video topics. I'm hoping to make a more comprehensive video about the election when it happens in September, but right now it's quite early, and I thought I'd get out this little video about a candidate who's not so well known in the English speaking world. Anyway, thank you for listening and have a great day, everyone.